So if you look at the lecture on the four Zoas, you'll learn a little bit about Urizen and how he, in trying to announce his ascendancy, sent what was a unified fourfold dance into divisive state among the four Zoas. And the Book of Urizen is about this very moment when Urizen, the Zoa Urizen, says to the other three Zoas who are equal to him in power and importance, when he says to the other three Zoas, I'm number one, I'm it, I am the most important of you, I'm better than you, you should ultimately work not with me but for me. Of course, Urizen, in being a manifestation of human reason, is ultimately so abstract as to lack any fleshliness or concreteness whatsoever. Here's how the poem, the Book of Urizen, opens. And I should say before I go to the opening that the Book of Urizen is Blake's Gnostic rewriting of the Book of Genesis, where he sees the creation of God as a negative, because ultimately it brings what was unified and dynamic into a divisiveness that ultimately leads to a kind of cosmic battle. So here is Urizen suddenly appearing to the other Zoas and what Blake calls the Eternals, who seem to be presences outside of the Zoas. Lo, a shadow of horror is risen in eternity, unknown, unprolific, self-closed, all-repelling. What demon hath formed this abominable void, this soul-shuddering vacuum? Some said it is Urizen, but unknown, abstracted, brooding, secret, the dark power hid. So you see how Blake uses negatives to describe Urizen. Unknown, unprolific, because he's so abstract. It's almost like he's not a presence at all. He's just this sort of invisible presence trying to reduce the world to logic and predictability. Well, what does Urizen ultimately want? Here's what the poet says. That Urizen basically wants what? He wants a joy without pain and a solid without fluctuation. A joy without pain and a solid without fluctuation. So this is a character who is so enamored of control that he wants the world to be static, the same all the time. But there's a mistake here, because obviously you can't have joy without pain. Joy only exists in opposition to pain, and solids only exist in opposition to fluctuation. So basically, Urizen wants to divide the world in two and take the quality that he most likes and use it to annihilate the other quality. But the problem with that is this. If I want to create a world that is all up and no down, that is all light and no dark, then upness goes away as a meaningful concept and lightness goes away as a meaningful concept. That's one problem. But the other problem is, just think of it ecologically. If, say, I don't like death, and I say, well, I know that life and death seem to go together, but I don't like death, I'm going to take death away. Well, if I take death out of the natural world, then what's going to happen? Everything is going to die, because you have to have death for there to be growth. So this shows that Urizen's fantasy of total order is wrong from the start in the world of nature. So this is why Urizen likes machines, because machines are predictable. Machines are dead. Machines are, even though they move, ultimately static, because they follow out the same program, the same designing over and over again. So ultimately, Urizen wants to turn the world into a machine. Now, this may sound odd, but Blake was very much aware of how thinkers and scientists and philosophers of the late 17th and throughout the 18th century imagined the world as a vast machine. This began with Newton, who imagined the world as indivisible atoms moving mathematically at mathematically predictable rates through a void. So basically the universe is just as predictable as a machine is. This was a positive thing for certain rationalist thinkers of the 18th century. Again, the idea being that the mind, if it can figure out how the world works, will find that the world is ultimately like a gigantic pocket watch. Well, Blake knew that this is deeply problematic because if the world is a machine, there's no place for freedom. There's no place for creativity. So the critique of Urizen is manifold in this poem. Again, the main one being that he wants to reduce the world to a machine. Meanwhile, you have Los, who is Urthona fallen, pushing against Urizen. He's trying to give Urizen form. He's trying to give Urizen a body. He's trying to sink Urizen in natural process of growth and decay and life and death. But he's finding that very difficult to do because, of course, Urizen, as being a power more of negation than of positive creation, is hard to see, hard to find, hard to pin down. So these are two of the basic ideas in the Book of Urizen. Again, the idea that Urizen trying to take over the four Zoas ultimately creates a world of death, and that the only counter to that world of death is poetry, imagination, los. And we see this played out biographically in Blake's great battle with Newton. They weren't contemporaries, but Blake saw Newton as a dangerous thinker, and he saw himself as someone trying to push back against the Newtonian mechanistic thinking. So that's a good entree into the Book of Urizen.